Hello and welcome to a very frustrating adventure in sleeve making. I had originally planned for this video to be the second one in my glacier dress series, but as I began working on the sleeves, which for some reason I thought would be the quickest part to finish up, so I could get a new video edited and published before the end of the month as I had promised, I quickly discovered a mistake I had made that derailed the entire process. So I put those sleeves in the naughty corner and I switched to finishing up the skirt instead. And that is why you got the skirt video first. Now, if you noticed the past mistake before past Chelsea does, put the timestamp in the comments. I am very curious to see if it was at all obvious to anyone else. Now, the sleeves are one of the first things I worked on when I started this entire project. I pretty much did the front skirt panel lace insertion, then the sleeve lace insertion, and then everything else. Let's journey back to August of 2021 to see how it all began. Okay, I'm trying out the placement of the insertion lace on the sleeve. I wasn't sure how it was going to look when I put it on, so I put on the blouse waist I made previously and pinned the sleeve together at the side seam, and then pinned it sort of where it's going to end up. I matched up the seam placement at the wrist and underarm. I think that's approximately where the top will be when it's gathered up. And I think I want to cheat it over somewhat so that the cross is above the elbow. So now I've marked the elbow with a pin, that pink pin there, so I have an idea of where I want it to line up. Okay, so I've moved the design over, but I don't think I like its new placement. I really want the top of the teardrop to be on my arm. So I'm gonna have to play around some more. Also, my elbow has moved. I ended up putting it back in pretty much the exact same place as I had pinned it originally. And then I put the sleeves aside for almost a year. Really, the entire project had to be put on hold while we prepared to sell our house and move to our new one, and by then it was well into autumn, so I switched my focus to winter projects. 10 months later, I pulled it out again and thought, I'll finish it for this summer. Spoiler alert, I did not. But I did make some headway. I began with stitching down the insertion lace as I had left it pinned 10 months before. In my first video in this series, I briefly went over how I sew my insertion lace and how to do cross lines in a design, but I did not go into detail in how to make curved lines. I had an advantage with this particular lace because it had previously been gathered into a rouleau trim, so one edge was inclined to bunch up even after I pressed it flat. This meant that I was able to ease the edge into the inside curve, leaving the other edge relatively flat. I used my seam ripper to control the tiny little tucks in the inside curved edge, sort of easing them under the presser foot as I stitched. When pinning the curves, I secured the outer edges first, then eased the inside curve to match it. But when stitching, I did it the other way around. I think I just wanted to get the more difficult part out of the way first, but it could be done either way. Then of course there's the pressing, cutting the fabric layer in between the lines of stitching, pressing the fabric edges out from the center, and stitching over them with a short and narrow zigzag stitch for extra stability. I should have trimmed away the excess fabric at this point, before repeating all these steps on the lines that crossed at the bottom of the teardrop design, but I did not think of it at the time. I should note that the lace I was using for the sleeves is left over from the lace insertion on the front skirt panel, which I made using 2 very long strips of lace that had been gathered to the same piece of trim. They were roughly the same length when I started, so I alternated which piece I used for the top teardrop and which for the bottom on each sleeve, so I could use them up evenly. At least, that was the idea. Okay, so I've laid the second sleeve on top of the first, wrong sides together, matched everything up, and then I pinned the lace, my leftover lace bits. I apparently did a really good job of measuring when I laid out the design on the first sleeve so that I would be sure to have enough. And then I just pinned by laying it on. I can kind of see through the fabric to where the insertion is on the other side, but I mostly laid it out by feel because I can feel that ridge of where the fabric is turned back and stitched a second time. So as you can see, I definitely have enough to do it. I even have a little like inch-long tail on this end, which is really annoying. And I might ease that back in and just make this loop just like a tiny bit bigger. I'm okay with the sleeves not being exactly perfectly symmetrical as long as they look symmetrical. But there's a fair amount, probably like 6 or 7 inches left from this end that I might be able to use somewhere else in the design. Still contemplating that, maybe on the collar. I do need to repin this edge because I do want the same sides crossing each other as that one, so I need to unpin this and sew this part down first and have this come across so that it mirrors the first sleeve. And I did correct that on this side, so it should be the same. Okay, I've gone back and eased that extra inch back into the curve, so this one will come up slightly higher than the other sleeve, and I'm okay with that. I have found that it's best when pinning this tight curve to smooth the outer edge and make sure that's not going to be stretched or puckered in any way, so that it'll be a nice smooth curve all along the outside, and then just ease in the inside curve, which you saw me doing earlier on the first sleeve. And here are the 2 sleeves side by side. As you can see, they are sisters, not twins, but they are pretty close to identical, so I'm happy and I'm going to go with it. It is always good to confirm that I have the right sides of both sleeves. So, we're good. And then another 9 months went by. When I came back to this project this time, I decided that I did want to trim away all the excess fabric from the edges of the lace insertion, after having done that on the skirt and really liking the result. The fabric is just sheer enough that it does make a difference, and I liked the cleaner look of the trimmed edges. It was a bit tedious to get all the spots where the lace crossed itself, since I had not trimmed the excess before stitching over the first line, but I was able to get most of it without too much trouble. I was, of course, very careful not to clip any of the stitching or any of the fabric outside the lace design. That would have been a tragedy. Okay, so this is my plan for the cuff. I am going to sew this lace just inside the seam allowance because I'm going to attach the sleeve right at the edge of the insertion lace, so I won't need the seam allowance. And I have measured, I have enough to do both cuffs. I did cut these pieces smaller than the original cuffs were because I tried them on my wrist and there's still plenty enough to overlap. The original pattern is much too large for me in the wrist, which is a problem that I've noticed with truly Victorian patterns in the past. The sleeves are almost always too big for me in the size that I use based on my bodice measurements. So I'm going to do this as insertion lace around 3/4, and it's going to be the edging of the actual cuff, but there will be enough overlap that I can put the buttonhole like right here. And then once I am done with all of the lace on the bodice, I should have enough left over to do a little ruffle on the end of the cuff. So this edge is going to attach to the sleeve up here. This will be the lower edge with a little ruffle, which I will gather up. And I am going to dye this white, seam tape lace along with the piece that I'm doing for the collar so that they are both partially blue and, blend in with the rest of my random assortment of blue lace. The undiluted dye was too saturated of a blue, so I watered it down just a bit. And then I let the dye sit on the lace for a little while before blotting away the excess to end up with a nice pale aquamarine. And I really like how it turned out. I have made a huge mistake. It has come time to gather the sleeve into the armhole and the cuff, but I didn't have any markings for where to gather on my sleeve pieces, so I got out my pattern and I started trying to match up my sleeve with the pattern pieces, and it just was not matching up anywhere. And then I realized I was using it upside down. The sleeve has more volume at the wrist than at the shoulder. The shoulder's supposed to fit pretty much directly into the armhole with minimal easing, which means my motifs are upside down. I have done all this beautiful insertion lace upside down. I don't know what to do. I feel like it's gonna look really stupid with the motifs coming down. That's not how I planned it. I planned it. Oh no. I planned for this, for, the top, the bulbous part of the teardrop to be on my bicep. And that's not... Instead, it's going to be on the back of my arm. I wanted it on the front and upside down, and this is not what I was going for at all. So I'm gonna be real with you guys. I lost all motivation to work on this dress for a good solid 2.5 months. And it's not the end of the world. I can obviously still use these sleeves and make this dress, but it's not going to be the way I designed it. And I was so disheartened by this fact that I just didn't want to work on it anymore. I had this vision of what the dress was going to look like, and I had planned it out so minutely, and now discovering that the sleeve design would be not just upside down, but also backwards. Because I had planned it out, you may recall, for the upside down teardrops to sit right on top of my arm in the front, so that from the front you would see them and they would echo the teardrops on the skirt, which one is upside down and one is right side up, so that part of it doesn't matter. But now they're going to be on the back of my arm because I did it backwards and upside down. So I was very frustrated. Like I said, it's not the end of the world. I can still make the dress. I can't redo the sleeves because I've done lace insertion. There's no way to seam rip the lace off and resew it in the correct direction and design, because I have cut away the fabric underneath and stitched it down, and now there are holes in the fabric. So even if I could take the lace off and put it where I want it to go, I don't have usable pieces of fabric to make the sleeves anymore. And as you may recall, I have no more of this fabric. So I'm going to use the sleeves upside down and backwards. Well, the design will be upside down and backwards. The sleeves are going to be right side up. So this project has been in the timeout corner for quite a while, and I guess it's time to pull it out again and soldier on. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it, but it's going to be okay. I'm still going to have a dress. Okay, here we go. Okay, here are the sleeves. You can see they are quite wrinkled from their time in the timeout corner. But we're going to gather them now and attach them to the cuffs and do some insertion lace to cover the seam on the cuffs. And then they're going to be done, pretty much. Oh, except this is the edge that's getting gathered into the cuffs. I keep making this mistake because I keep thinking that the larger part is the sleeve head, but no, this is the sleeve head. It's barely gathered into the armhole at all, and this is very densely gathered into this tiny cuff. As usual, I ran 2 rows of gathering stitches on my machine, using the straight stitch with the longest stitch length. And I pulled up the bobbin threads to gather that huge volume of sleeve into the tiny cuff, matching the centers so that I could ensure my gathers were even. I was about to sew this. It's all pinned. And I realized, fortunately before I started sewing, that I had pinned it on backwards, and the interior of the sleeve was going to be on the outside. And it's fine, because it's not too late to fix. But I just wonder if I'm really ready to sew these sleeves, or if maybe they need some more time. Okay, it's time. I've been procrastinating on these sleeves long enough. I am having to force myself to work on them because I've been in a really bad headspace about the sleeves. They've just been frustrating and annoying me for so long. But I'm going to work through it because I want to wear this on Saturday. I have an event, so I'm going to get it done. And it's going to be okay. I'm going to push through it. Make it work. I have repinned the cuff on this side the correct way around, so you can see the lace. This is the wrong side of the fabric, and I've pinned it properly to the cuff. And then I realized as I was about to sew it on that it would make more sense to sew the sleeve side seam first, leaving just this little bit of an opening before it's attached to the cuff, so that I can turn back the opening edges and stitch them down. So I'm going to do basically flat felled seams. I think I'm going to do it on both sides. I do have the original blouse that I made that I can reference. On this one I did French seams, and then I just clipped the seam allowance and flat felled the opening edges on either side, and then I think I just tacked down that seam allowance so that it wouldn't move around and fray too badly. So I want to do it differently on this. I'm going to do flat felled versus French seams. And once I have the sleeves sewn together and the cuffs put on, I can do the lace insertion on the cuff, make it look pretty, maybe make me feel better about this whole thing, and then they'll be ready to attach to the bodice, which I still need to finish. I was careful to match up the two sides of the sleeves exactly at the ends of the insertion lace, because after I had spent so much time meticulously pinning and repinning the lace in place, then finding out I had done it all wrong, at least this one thing was going to go right. Well, I have sleeves. I still need to finish the lace on the cuff, but sleeves are in existence. Yay. One sort of silver lining for me right now is that it's really hard to get an angle of this, but the bottom of the teardrop at the wrist, when the sleeve is hanging down, kind of ends right at that little edge of the sleeve, and it kind of looks like it's intentional. It's not. It's not intentional at all, because as you may recall, this is backwards, but I'm going to choose to be happy about it and pretend that that was my vision all along. This is what I mean. There's no way I could have done that if I was trying. Off camera, I pressed the seams open, then folded the seam allowances under and pressed them again. Sewing them down on the machine was a bit tricky, as there was a lot of sleeve that I needed to keep from getting caught under the needle as I stitched. Then I could finally attach the cuffs, stitching straight down in between the two lines of gathers. I deviated from my original plan for the lace insertion on the cuffs, choosing instead to sew one edge right along the pressed cuff seam, catching the seam allowance of both the sleeve and the cuff underneath. Then I carefully trimmed the excess material away before stitching down along the other edge of the lace. Now I could cut down the center of the fabric underneath and press and zigzag along the second edge. For the first edge, I just zigzagged over the first line of stitching, keeping the fabric flat underneath. I did this to give more strength at the seam connecting the sleeve to the cuff. Then I trimmed the excess fabric on both sides. Okay, I've removed the extra edging lace that I don't need, because this is now going to be the lace on the edges of my sleeve cuffs. I have 30 little scallops total, so 15 for each sleeve. I used strips of tissue paper as backing while sewing the gathering stitches on the lace. This prevented the needle from pushing the lace down into the hole of the stitch plate. The tissue paper is easily torn away when no longer needed. Then the lace was simply gathered up, stitched down, pressed, zigzag, and excess fabric trimmed, as usual. Okay, the cuff makes me like it better. Still mad, but nothing I can do at this point. So it's fine. It really is fine. And also there's nothing I can do about it. But I just wanted to see and show you what my vision was for the sleeve. This is what I wanted the sleeve to do. I wanted this teardrop at the top, right at the top of the arm, pointing up to the shoulder. And I also wanted this line where the two ends of the insertion lace meet to be pointing towards the wrist. That was my vision. That's what I wanted. And it was not to be, but at least I have recorded what it was. By now I had also finished the bodice and attached it to the skirt. So the final step was attaching the sleeves. I lined them up very carefully, matching the notches in the pattern and checking to make sure the lace insertion looked even once both sleeves were pinned on. I was taking no chances at this point. Fortunately, I had no further issues with these sleeves. They were finally attached, and as you can see, I have, as of this recording, finally finished the glacier dress, just in time to celebrate 2 years since I started working on it in the first place. I will reveal the final product in my next video, but for now, here is a sneak peek of the sleeves in action. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give me a like, and if you want to see more, definitely subscribe. And don't forget to comment below if you spotted my mistake before I did. Stay tuned, and I will see you soon. Bye. To see how it all began. And I have not had my microphone on this entire time. Hello, and welcome to a very frustrating adventure in sleeve making. I swear this video is cursed.